G'day guys, welcome back to the review for round 11 this week, of course, and we had a massive couple of games. We started on Thursday night with the Bulldogs up against Sydney. We saw a draw and so many more interesting games. So let's of course start on Thursday night, the Bulldogs up against the Sydney Swans, and the Bulldogs injury ravaged throughout the whole game. They did really well to fight against the best team in the competition at the moment, but the Bulldogs went down by 14 points in the end. The Sydney Swans 102, Bulldogs 88. Let's talk about the injuries. So first of all, we had Scott, who had a head clash early in the game against Cunningham, and he took a while to get to his feet and he was subbed out in the first quarter. Aaron Naughton then had his knee twisted in a tackle, and there were some major concerns for his season, but it was confirmed on Friday that he did sustain a moderate grade medial ligament injury, and he will be out for about 4 to 6 weeks. So that is good news. The fact that it's not an ACL, but 4 to 6 weeks without Aaron Naughton is going to be pretty unlucky there for the Dogs. And then finally, probably the biggest injury of the night, this is kind of where it changed the game. Ed Richards had a head clash early in the third term, and he was ruled out with concussion throughout late in the third quarter. And he was their best player by far at halftime. Me and my brother were talking, he was watching the game. He said that he probably had the 3 votes at halftime, and because of that injury, it really changed the game for the Dogs. But let's get to the game itself. The Bulldogs did kick the first 2 goals of the game and started pretty nicely, but the Swans fought their way back midway through the quarter. The Dogs did kick a late goal and did take a 2-point lead into quarter time, and the Dogs absolutely dominated a lot of the territory battle in the first quarter, capped off by the inside 50 count. The Bulldogs led 16-10 at quarter time. It was goal for goal in the game in the second term, but the Swans actually took a 2-goal lead late in the first term. But again, the Dogs responded, kicking 2 of their own and took a 4-point lead into half-time. But then the Swans really came back in the third term, ready to make a statement, led by Chad Warner. I think John Longmire gave him a little bit of a spray at half-time, saying that they weren't playing good enough. But Chad Warner, what a third quarter he played. Just looking at the statistics, he had 10 touches, 2 goal assists, and 2 goals. So Chad Warner was absolutely massive. And after the Dogs were probably the better team in the first half, the Swans really did take control in that third quarter. They kicked 5 goals, 2 to the Dogs, 1 goal, 3. And that's really where the game was won. The Dogs, however, did try to fight their way back in the final term with 3 goals midway through the quarter to give Sydney a scare, but missed opportunities did catch the Dogs off in this game. And looking at the last 3 weeks now, the Dogs have gone 19-19 against their scoring shots against the Tigers, 8 goals, 22 against the Giants, and against the Swans on Thursday night, they kicked 12 goals, 16. So I think actually watching this game that the Bulldogs actually could be a team this season. But if they're not going to take their opportunities against top sides, they're going to struggle to make the 8. That 50 I will talk about after the votes, but we'll talk about that in a minute because there's been a couple of controversial umpiring decisions this weekend. So let's get to the statistics, of course, on the AFL Fantasy front. Top scorers were Brodie Grundy and Errol Goulden, both with 119. Chad Warner with the 115. Bailey Dale with the 103. Bontempelli with the 101. And then Isaac Heaney scraped through with a 34-point last quarter to get 100. And then, of course, we get to the votes. Now, of course, I've mentioned it many times. We're giving a 3-2-1 voting system for every single game of the AFL season. And then a live stream at the end of the regular season and doing a live countdown of every single vote in the game. And eventually, we will have our second ever Boundary Riders medalist. But, of course, let's get to the votes in this game. I think it's pretty obvious who's going to get the 3 votes. 3 in the end went to Chad Warner, 2 votes went to Errol Goulden, and the 1 vote went to Brodie Grundy. Now, about that 50 metres against Lathan Vandermeer. Extremely tough. I think letter of the law, and we'll talk about the letter of the law throughout a lot of this video, it's probably 50, but common sense you would think would prevail, and that shouldn't have been 50 against Vandermeer. I'm a Swans fan, and I don't think that should have been 50. I think the umpiring this season has been off, to say the least. And that was a terrible decision, and it did stop the momentum of the Bulldogs in the end. I will say, though, there was a free kick against Chad Warner in the third term, I believe. I think it was in the second term, that was called high. I think it could have been to Vandermeer. It was one of the younger Bulldogs players, which was absolutely nowhere near high, and the umpire had perfect view of it and still paid it. And there's been a lot of decisions this season that have maybe not decided games, but they have changed momentums of games, at the very least. But let's move on and talk about the Fremantle Collingwood game. And oh boy, we'll talk about that decision at the end of the votes. But Fremantle fought their way back in the final 10 minutes. After kicking only about 6 goals for the game, they kicked 4 goals late and got away with a draw and almost stole this one, 75 each against Collingwood. Let's talk about the injuries, though. Mason Cox was subbed out in the third term with concussions. That's unfortunate. And Myercheck was out in the final term with hamstring awareness. So the Dockers did have a lot of opportunities in the first quarter. They did have a lot of territory, but just couldn't show it on the scoreboard. And 2 late goals to the Pies actually saw them take a 1-point lead into quarter time. We went over half the quarter in the second term without a goal until the Dockers piled on 3 goals in 4 minutes, which broke the game margin out to 13 points for the Dockers at half half-time and actually kept Collingwood goalless in the quarter. However, we did see Collingwood kick 5 behind in that second term, and it did show some signs that the Pies weren't far away in this game, and in the third term, the Pies really took control. Collingwood quickly took the lead back with 3 quick goals in the third term, despite stagnation throughout the middle period of the quarter. We saw the Pies kept the Dockers goalless in the third quarter, kicked 2 late goals to make it 5 in a row in total, and took a 16-point lead into three-quarter time Collingwood. So Collingwood, midway through the fourth quarter, had a 25-point lead, which was the biggest of the game, and it really felt like the game was done. It looked like Fremantle was stagnant. They didn't have any sort of ball movement getting it forward. It looked like Collingwood had it locked down. It looked like game was over. But then, of course, we saw the very controversial decision, which we'll talk about in a minute. And the Dockers, to their credit, were able to fight their way back. They fought back from 25 points down with about 10 minutes to go and almost stole this game. Unfortunately for Jeremy Sharp, he had a late chance to kick a goal. He kicked it to the left-hand side. And unfortunately for Collingwood, they had to share the points with Fremantle, 2 points each. So let's talk about the statistics. Luke Ryan, top score with the 144. Nick Dacos with the 133. Jordan Clark had a brilliant game with the 128. Darcy Cameron with the 117. Andrew Brayshaw with the 105. And then Jeremy Sharp with the 105 as well. Now let's get to the votes in this game. Me and my brother obviously watched this on the live stream, so we decided this while we were watching it. So the votes in the end, 3 votes went to Jordan Clark, 2 votes went to Darcy Cameron, and the 1 vote went to Caleb Sarong. Now, by the letter of the law, that is a free kick against Sullivan, who threw it to Nick Dacos instead of throwing it back to the umpire. But surely, at that stage of the game, it didn't waste any time. I know that there's been some decisions that have been paid this season, so for people who are saying that it's never been paid, it actually has been paid 4 times this season, I believe. But it's a very tough call. We have seen a lot of calls this season that have decided games, changed games, and I feel like, I don't know if the umpires have been told you have to pay decisions by the letter of the law and not just taking a little bit of leniency on these sort of decisions. I was shocked when it was called. If you watch the live stream, you would know how shocked me and my brother were that was paid. And by no means are we Collingwood supporters. So we were shocked. We were like, how the hell could you pay that decision this late in the game? And it changed the momentum of it. Now, the AFL have, of course, ticked it off because they're not going to go against their umpires. A letter of the law decision, but in the context of the game, I mean, it didn't cut off a lot of time. It was like a millisecond. He threw it to Dacos, who quickly threw it back to the umpire. And I just think that I get the time-wasting sort of call, but that was a real big decision. And it changed the whole momentum of the game. It gave Fremantle a way back into it, and they fought their way back to kick 4 late goals. On the other hand, Collingwood should not have conceded 4 goals late in this game. I think that's what AFL fans are a little bit frustrated about, is the consistency. And in this game and this season, the consistency has been like mud. One week they'll be calling holding the ball for things that are actually holding the ball, and then players can completely drop it and there's no holding the ball decision called. So I think that's where the frustration lies, and yeah, I think that decision was correct by the letter of the law, but wrong for the game itself. So now let's move to our first game on Saturday, guys, and it was the Blues up against the Gold Coast Suns. The Gold Coast played well for 3 quarters or so, but Carlton finally broke them in the final quarter, ending up winning by 29 points, 102-73, the Gold Coast Suns. So there were no injury concerns from this game, so let's get straight into the game itself. The Blues did dominate most of the first quarter and kick the first 3 goals of the game, but the Suns did kick 2 late goals to only be down by 9 points at quarter time. The Blues kicked the first goal of the second term, but missed so many opportunities, finishing with 1 goal 5 for the team in the quarter. And the Suns actually won the term, but were still down by 7 points at the main break. The Blues tried to break away in the third term, but to the credit of the Suns, every single time the Blues tried to break away, the Suns would kick a goal and get themselves back into the game. But the Blues did kick a late goal in the third term to lead by 17 points at 3/4 time. And finally, the Blues were able to break away early in the final term with 5 quick goals to lead by 48 points at one stage. And the Suns did get a few late goals to bring back the margin to 29 points. So a really good win from the Blues in the end. It was probably one of their better performances of the last 5 or 6 weeks. That is good to see. And they didn't have any injury concerns, which is also very good. Zach Williams did play quite well with the 4 goals playing up forward. And of course, with Adam Sard coming back, that gave him the license to go forward. So that was some good signs for the Blues. And I think they are back after a couple of pretty poor performances in the past month or so. Let's look at the statistics in this game, though. On the AFL Fantasy front, of course, Sam Walsh, top score with a 114. Great response after last week getting tagged by James Jordan. Tom De Koning, sole ruck. He got 112 in the end. Blake Acres with the 111. Jared Witts with the 107. Paddy Cripps with the 98, and then we have Matt Rowell with 97. So let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes went to Sam Walsh, 2 votes went to Paddy Cripps, and 1 vote went to Zach Williams. I really liked his performance in the end. He got some early goals, but played really well up forward with his forward pressure and ended up with 4 goals in the end, Zach Williams. So that may be a avenue they work with, because they do obviously have the really good 2 key forwards in Mackay and Curnow. But I think for a while now, the Blues have struggled to find a small forward to help with them too when the ball gets to ground. So I think that Zach Williams could definitely offer that sort of forward pressure forward that they really do need. Let's move to the next game though, North Melbourne up against Port Adelaide. And in the end, Port Adelaide did what they kind of had to do. It wasn't a big smashing in the end on North Melbourne's basis. It was only a 59-point win to Port Adelaide, 107-248. There was one injury concern from this game, which was Willie Rioli, who was subbed out early with a calf problem, and he was out in the first term. So let's move to the game itself. Now, North Melbourne were very competitive early in this game and were only down by a point with a few minutes to go in the first quarter, but Port Adelaide did kick 2 late goals to lead by 11 points at quarter time. Both teams struggled to kick a goal in the second term with only 3 goals between them, but it was a late goal from Port Adelaide which saw them lead by 20 points at half time, and Port Adelaide really took control in the third quarter. They opened the game up with 4 quick goals early in the third term. The game at that point was basically done. Port Adelaide did lead by 53 points at 3-quarter time, and at the end of the game, Port Adelaide ran away winners by 59 points. Now, there were some good signs from North Melbourne again, but if a good signs of North Melbourne is still losing by 59 points, it's simply not good enough. And I still think they are very far away from winning a game this season, North Melbourne. So another really disappointing loss for them. Let's move to the statistics in this game though. So top scorer on the AFL Fantasy Front of this game was Darcy Tucker, surprisingly, with the 132. Tristan Cherry with the 120. Travis Boak, highest scored for Port Adelaide with the 115. He had a good performance. Luke Davis-Uniacke with the 114 along with Ollie Wines. And then we had Zach Fisher with the 112. So let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes went to Todd Marshall with his 5 goals. 2 votes went to Ollie Wines, and the 1 vote went to Jason Horne-Francis. So let's get to the biggest game on Saturday, which was Geelong up against the GWS Giants. And the Giants have won 4 straight games in a row now in Geelong, with a come-from-behind win in the end in the late stages to win by 4 points. A massive game. Giants won 78-74. There was an injury concern from this game. Unfortunately, it is Stephen Coniglio again. He's been in the wars so far this year. He hurt his shoulder in the first quarter. He did have it re-strapped and was sent back onto the field, but unfortunately, he did re-injure the same shoulder in the contest in the second term, and he was subbed out just before half-time. So a little bit concerning. I think they'll give him a couple of weeks on the sidelines because he's been in a bit of the wars this year. He obviously had that knee injury earlier in the season, and now he's had a shoulder injury, so just unlucky. He's such a tough player, though, Stephen Coniglio, so hopefully he's back soon for the Giants. But let's get to the game. The Cats absolutely dominated in the first quarter and kicks 5 straight goals going into quarter time and led by 14 points. But the Giants did start to get their way back in the first quarter, started to fight their way back in the game itself. And in the second term, things started to click for them. The Giants kicked 2 quick goals to start the second term. And even though the Cats actually got 1 back themselves, the Giants continued their form with 4 more goals to go into half-time with a 19-point lead. The Giants early in this third term actually kicked 2 more goals to take a game-high 31-point lead. And it looked like maybe the Giants could go on and get a big win here. After being poor the last month or so, they were on for a really big game here, the Giants. But to the credit of the Cats, they fought their way back with 3 goals going into 3-quarter time to only be down by 13 points. The Cats kicked 2 early goals in the final term to draw level and almost took a goal lead through Brad Close, but it was overturned by the Arc, and it was touched from the kick from Harry Perriman, so he did save a goal there, and they were up by 1 point, the Cats, but they had so many opportunities in the last quarter. At one stage, I think the inside 50 count in the last quarter was the Cats 20 to the Giants 3. So the Cats had so many opportunities and really should have won this game in the end. But to the Giants, they got the ball forward late. They found it to Toby Green, who won the game for the Giants, as he's done so many times before. It was by far his best game of the season, Toby Green, and he won it for them. It was a great performance from him and a great win from the Giants. But I do, of course, have to give a special shout out to Lee Kalia, who took 2 crucial late defensive marks to save the game for the Giants. He's such a big player for the future for the Giants. He did come in this week for Jack Buckley, so I hope they do try and keep him in the team somewhere as an intercept marker, because I think he was so good in the game at times against Jeremy Cameron. In the end, Lee Kalia deserves so much credit for a couple of really good marks late in the game. I think I saw the celebrations after the game of him with fans who were just trying to get photos with him and talking to him, and he was so excited. So great performance from him. He deserves a special shout out. So great job in the end from the Giants, and they're finally back on the winners list. But to the Cats, they've lost 4 in a row now, and now questions do start to come for them. I did say last week that this is the game that they have to win because the last 3 weeks they have been beaten. And against the Gold Coast, I gave them a little bit of a mulligan, but they had to win this game. They dominated the last quarter. They dominated most of the second half, and in the end, to not have won that game is really disappointing for Geelong. But let's move to the statistics on this game. Top scorer in the end was Kieran Briggs with the 121, Max Holmes with the 116, Toby Green with the 108, Ryan Angwin with the 93, Tom Green with the 91, along with Harry Himmelberg. So let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes. For the first time, I think he's got a vote this year, is Toby Green. He got 3 votes. 2 votes went to Kieran Briggs, and the 1 vote went to Jake Riccardi. Great performance from Jake Riccardi as well. He got 4 goals. He's been out of form the past few weeks, so it's a good performance from him to get back on the winners list and the scoring list for the Giants. So now let's get to the final game on Saturday. Saturday night, it was dream time at the G, and the Tigers really brought a great performance out for them. Unfortunately, they did fall short by 2 goals. The Bombers did go on to win 86-74, but finally Richmond showed up. The last 2 weeks, they've been smashed by 200 plus points in the last 2 games. So a really good performance from the Tigers. There were a couple of injury concerns from this game though. On Essendon's front, it was an early one to Nick Cox, who pulled up with a hammy in the first quarter, and he was subbed out at quarter time. And then Shea Bolton was subbed out late in the game with concussion, and it was actually after some friendly fire from McKelty Lafau. So that's really unfortunate. Shea Bolton was playing a pretty decent game, and he's been one of the better performances this year. So that was a little bit unfortunate for them. But let's get to the game itself. It was quite a goal-for-goal start to this game. Neither team could break away in the first quarter, and scores were level after quarter time. Special shout-out to Jake Stringer, who got all 3 goals for the Bombers in the first quarter, so he had a really good start to this game. The Tigers did take an early lead in the second term, but the Bombers kicked 4 quick goals to take an 18-point lead. But to the credit of the Tigers, they kicked 2 goals in response and were only down by 6 points at half-time. The Tigers took the lead early in the third term, and all night were able to stay with the Bombers, so you have to give them a lot of credit. The Bombers tried to break away with 2 goals midway through the quarter, but the Tigers responded with 2 of their own, and were only down by 2 points late in the third term, but the Bombers did get a late goal, which saw them lead by 8 points at 3/4 time. It was quite a tight final term, with both teams struggling to score, but the Tigers missed some crucial chances early in the last quarter. They kicked 4 behinds in a row, and the Bombers were able to go down the other end, kick 2 goals of their own, and that's basically where the game was done. They did seal a victory there, the Bombers, and in a competitive game, they won by 12 points. I mean, they did what they have to do in the end. Essendon, sometimes you can't play your best, but as the top side, you need to find a way to beat those teams down below if you're not having your best game, and that's what they did in the end. So they get back into second spot. Let's get to the statistics on this game. Top scorer was, for the first game of the year, Jordan Ridley was back in the team. He's top scored with 132. Great performance from him. Nick Hines scored 110, Zach Merritt with the 109, Kyle Langford with the 104, Nick Martin with the 102, and then Toby Nankervis with the 100. Now let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes in his first game for the year, Jordan Ridley. He won the games medal in the Dreamtime game. He also got 3 votes. 2 votes went to Zach Merritt, and 1 vote, great response from Dustin Martin. He's probably not he's never going to get back to what he was a couple of years ago, but it was a great performance from Dustin Martin. He got the 1 vote in the end. So guys, let's get to the first game on Sunday, and another big win for Hawthorn against the Brisbane Lions. I believe this is the 4th straight win against the Lions they have had, Hawthorn. So they're kind of the bunny on the back of the Brisbane Lions, and in the end, Hawthorn won by 25 points, 100-75. So Brisbane are in a bit of a hole right now, so let's talk about the game itself. So despite the Lions actually getting the first goal of this game, Hawthorn really dominated the first quarter. They piled on 4 quick goals throughout the first term and took a 3-goal lead into quarter time. And again, the Lions did get the first goal of the second term, but the Hawks really took control again. They piled on 4 more goals to take a 6-goal plus lead throughout the second term. But finally, the Lions took a little bit of control back into this game late in the second term with 3 consecutive goals to only be down by 24 points at half time. Now, the Lions started to fire a lot more in the third term and started to play some doubts into the Hawks' minds after, of course, last week. They kicked 3 goals in a row but missed so many chances with 7 behinds throughout the quarter. And a late goal to Hawthorn saw the Lions be down by 8 points at 3/4 time. And honestly, if it wasn't for the Hawks choking last week against Port Adelaide, I don't think anyone would have had a thought that the Lions were going to come back here, because in the final quarter, Hawthorn performed absolutely brilliantly, a lot better than last week. They continued to attack, they didn't go into their shell, and in the end, they ran away to a comfortable 25-point victory. So, to the Lions, at the moment, they are a real chance of missing the 8, and there are 2 wins out of the 8 now. They are lucky, honestly, because they have got a good percentage after a massive win against Richmond the week before. But right now, they are a long way off looking like a finals team at the moment, the Brisbane Lions, and it's a huge drop-off from last year. Now, I know that they've had a few injuries this year, but the likes of Carlton have had massive injuries, Collingwood have had massive injuries, and they are doing a lot better than Brisbane at the moment. So there's got to be some concerns right now for the Lions. But let's look at the statistics in this game. Top scorer in the end was Carl Amon with the 125, Jared Berry with the 107, McInerney with the 103, Day with the 102, Neal with the 100, and then D'Ambrosio with the 98. So, of course, let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes went to Will Day. 2 votes went to James Sicily, probably his best game of the year. He was brilliant. And the 1 vote went to Lachie Neale. After that, let's get to the middle game on Sunday, which was the Demons up against St Kilda. And St Kilda were pretty good for the first half, but in the end, the Demons ran away pretty comfortably, winning by 38 points. 100 to the Demons, 62 to St Kilda. Now, there was one injury concern from this game, which was Harrison Petty. He did get subbed out in the third term, so that is pretty disappointing for the Demons. Let's get to the game, though. The Saints did kick the first goal of this game, but the Demons absolutely dominated the first term. They did miss some chances, though, and the Demons should have led by a lot more, but only held a 25-point lead at quarter time. It was a pretty tight second term, and it was a good job to St Kilda because they did stop the rot. The Saints did kick 3 of the 4 goals in the second term and were only down by 2 goals at half time. But as we have seen a few times this season, the Demons have done against lesser sides, in the third term they did start to break away. They had 6 goals to 1 in the quarter and ran away to a 41-point lead at 3/4 time. And the game did open up a little bit more in the final quarter. 3 goals went Melbourne's way, 4 goals went St Kilda's way, but the game was well and truly done. And the Demons went on to win comfortably by 38 points. So well done to Melbourne. They got back on the winners list, but at the end of the day, it was St Kilda and they are in a massive hole. I mean, they beat North Melbourne by, I think that was the lowest they've lost by this year. They did beat Richmond, but that was in Norwood. So right now, St Kilda, it's going to be hard to see how many times they're going to win games this year, St Kilda, because they are in a massive hole. They don't look like they're going to score. Max King did kick 3, but if they can't score over 70 points in a game, they're not going to win many this year, St Kilda. So let's look at the statistics in this game, though. Max Gawn was an injury concern before the game, but he had a massive performance. He dominated Rowan Marshall at times, and he got 152 top scored. Christian Salem got 133, Jack Steele with the 122, Wanganeen Miller with the 108, Viney with the 105, and then 100 to Stephen May. So let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes went to Max Gawn, 2 votes went to Stephen May, and 1 vote went to Adam Tomlinson. Now, he had a massive performance in the first half. He topped anyone throughout the whole game with intercept possessions. He was dominant in the first half. He had like 19 touches. He did kind of taper off in the second half. He would have had the 3 votes at half time. But I thought Adam Tomlinson was brilliant. He really did well after the loss of Jake Lever from last week. So I had to give Tomlinson a vote here. He was really good performance from him. And yeah, I think Melbourne's defence, it's never been questioned in the last couple of years. It's always been their attack. But they're holding up very well this year, the Melbourne defence. So kudos to them. And guys, let's get to the final game of round 11. And in the end, it was just an absolute demolition job from the Adelaide Crows against the West Coast Eagles. I think a lot of people would have seen a win from the Crows, but maybe not by this much. It was a 99-point thrashing, 137 to the Crows, 38 to the West Coast Eagles. There was one injury concern from this game, which was Alex Witherden, who hurt his calf in the third quarter and was subbed out at 3/4 time. But let's get to the game itself. The Crows absolutely dominated the first quarter, and this basically set the tone for the whole game. 18 inside 50s to 8 in the first term, and they kicked all 7 goals. The Adelaide Crows going into quarter time leading by 44 points. The Crows continued to dominate in the second term. The Eagles were laughed off the ground at halftime, in my opinion, with the Crows kicking a further 6 more goals and leading by 61 points at halftime. The Crows even started to manage players and taking off Jake Saligo, subbing him out at halftime, and he was one of their better performers going into halftime. I think I gave him 2 votes at that point. But the Crows continued to pile on the pain in the third quarter. They kicked 5 goals to 1 and took a massive 86-point lead in the 3/4 time. And the only player I can give credit to from the West Coast Eagles in this game was a 10th gamer in Harley Reid. He was the only player who was not accepting the fact that they were going to be beaten by 100 points here, basically. He was pushing away, he was breaking off tackles. He was the one who kicked the goal in that quarter for the West Coast Eagles. And the fact that a 10th gamer is the one who's trying to rally your team when they're getting smashed is honestly pretty embarrassing for the West Coast Eagles. I really thought this was past them. I thought they were not going to be getting thrashed anymore. To go to Adelaide, they were expected to at least throw a punch. I know they haven't been very good away from home this season. They've lost all 5 games. But I thought there would be a bit of a chance here that they would, give a bit of fight. And the fact that they didn't really throw a punch at all is really terrible from the West Coast Eagles. They were down by 86 points at 3/4 time, and in the final quarter, it was basically just a training drill for the Adelaide Crows in the final term. They couldn't break the 100 in the end, but they still ran on to win by 99 points, the Adelaide Crows. Let's look at the statistics in this game. Lachie Scholl top scored with the 124. Jordan Dawson was massive, led from the front, 123. Rory Laird with the 101. Matt Crouch with the 98, along with Chase Jones, and then we saw Mark Keane with the 95. So let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes went to Jordan Dawson, 2 votes went to Darcy Darcy Fogarty. He was brilliant. Only got 2 goals, but he was involved in so many scores for them. And the 1 vote went to Chase Jones. Kicked 3 goals in the end and had 19 touches, so I thought he deserved the 1 vote. But of course, guys, now that that's all said and done, round 11 is all up. Let's take a look at the live ladder. And the Swans still hold a 6-point lead on top of the ladder with 10 wins and 1 loss and a massive 150%. The Bombers sit in second spot. A less than convincing win against the Tigers, but they did enough to win and they hold in second spot. Their percentage is a little bit low, so they're going to have to start winning some games decently, or they're going to have to keep on winning at least to hold that top 2 spot. But at this stage, they sit in second. Port Adelaide are in third. Fourth is Melbourne. Fifth is GWS with that win. Geelong are in 6th now with their 4th straight loss. Collingwood in 7th spot. Carlton are in 8th. And now outside the 8, we have Fremantle in 9th. Gold Coast in 10th. Western Bulldogs are in 11th. Crows are in 12th. Brisbane Lions are in 13th. Hawthorn 14th. St Kilda now drop into the bottom 4 in 15th. The West Coast Eagles with that massive loss are in 16th. Richmond are in 17th. And of course, down the bottom are still North Melbourne. So right now, I think from basically 13th all the way up to 8th now can make the finals. I think Brisbane are a little bit far back, but their percentage does help them. But right now, it's really hard to see what teams are actually going to fall out of the 8. I think it's going to be a really competitive end to the season. I think it's a really exciting end to this season, guys. But end of the review for round 11. Thank you for watching, guys. Thank you for listening. I just want to quickly mention as well that there's a big video, another one of our video essays coming out on Monday. So tomorrow, of course, will be coming out at the regular time for that at 2:30 Adelaide time, 3 o'clock Melbourne time. It's a topic that I'm really passionate about. It's about AFL commentary. So if you actually become a channel member, you can watch it now. But if you want to wait until it comes out for everyone, it'll be at 3 o'clock tomorrow. So I'm really excited about it. Hopefully you guys enjoy that sort of video. But thank you for watching the review this week. If you did like it, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you are listening over on Spotify, make sure to chuck us 5 stars over there. And also follow. You'll be notified on the reviews every single week. And of course, the Boundary Riders podcast. But guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And we'll catch you all next week.